The other day, me and my friend were talking about stuff, and because of a mention of a specific show, we ended up talking about how there's this weird trend happening a lot recently, where negative attention, largely from Twitter, is bringing in a shit ton of revenue. Now, I want to make it clear that this isn't always the case for everything that gets massive negative attention. I just want to point out the ones that ended up making the thing earn even more money than it would have if people were to shut the fuck about it at the time. So, yeah, let's get down to all of the examples that I could think of at the top of my head. Hey, so I am in the middle of getting the first draft exported, and I am injecting this here in the second and final draft to say that please don't go and harass the people featured here. They don't deserve it, and it's better that all of this is left behind on their end than to bring it up again after so long. Especially for the cases in this video where the events occurred last year. And the last thing I want to do is bring in, like, more controversy surrounding these, titles. They've already gotten enough already. Okay, back to the video. We are starting this off with something more scary than any horror movie combined. Skin of a Woman. And it's also the second most relevant thing on this list after scripting. More on that later. Anyways, this is one of the growing examples of people being prudes for the very specific characters that is exclusive to female characters and popular things, this time with the main protagonist in Stellar Blade, Eve. Alright, kind of a rant, but I really hate these kinds of complaints and it's becoming annoying to see, especially because of how hypocritical some can get, and I could go into more detail about this in general, but this would just derail the premise of the video. But to condense it for this specific case, people are mad that people are jerking it to mainly Eve from Stellar Blade because of the suit designs, and other people make it their civic duty to portray this as something worse than slavery, and that's why you shouldn't support this game. The game, when it was released in April 26 of this year, has its sights to having sent 1 million copies sold within 24 hours of launch. Now, let's assume they already did make 1 million copies already since of writing the script. It's already been 3 days since release, so it probably has already made its goal by then. Most likely would definitely make it by the time this video comes out. This totally won't age poorly. Anyways, we're going to do an estimated range of copies sold since this game has a base and deluxe edition for the game. With that, we can determine that the estimate of revenue generated from the game can range from 70 million to 80 million American dollars. Honestly, that's really impressive for a new IP title for PS5 and PC, on just reaching 1 million copies alone. I do want to make it clear that the people who are complaining are people who simply find Eve attractive isn't the sole reason as to why sales are like that. For this, there's multiple factors, including a whole debacle about the censorship, which is a whole other can of worms I'm not gonna get into here. But yeah, good job on getting them darn Coomers. You taught them a lesson. You totally didn't contribute to the game's sales in any capacity.
Your Honor, there's this thing called choking, and it's a very common practice amongst couples.
Next off, we have a game that caused shockwaves on the online sphere by tenfold last year when it released as early access. This game was so much of a common occurrence to see online, especially Twitter, that I had to mute it after seeing it for weeks on end. If you don't know what this game did to deserve such a thing, it's having an incest plotline in their story. Just it existing and nothing about intention and presentation. Unlike Stellar Blade, I can understand the aggression for this more, only for obvious morality reasons more than anything else. But yeah, I can't talk about the Coffin of Andy and Lele without talking about the extreme polarization between the two sides for this game. One side being people who are memeing the game and also really likes the incest aspect of it all a little too much, while the other side is aggressively trying to make it seem that the people who like the game is the equivalent of bombing an orphanage, and even caused the creator to leave the internet and hand over production to someone else after being doxxed. My honest opinion is that both sides are wrong because, in retrospect, the entire debate about the game is stupid on all ends when you really think about their points. Anyways, according to VG Insights, since its release in late 2023, the amount of revenue this game has generated is 4.1 million American dollars. Now, this is a low ball compared to Stellar Blade's revenue, but 4.1 million is still a ton of money, especially for a smaller independent project. But yep, that doxing sure did a number on them people who liked the game. It totally didn't add up to the game's revenue in any way. Next up is everyone's third favorite Pokemon lookalike that everyone for around its announcement and release time was freaking out over, with the most common thing being brought up is how it looks a lot like Pokemon. And yeah, if I'll be honest, out of all of the Pokemon clones out there, it is the one that actually looks like Pokemon, and that's an undeniable fact. Now, is it one to get mad over twice? I don't think so personally, but mainly people on Twitter will say otherwise. Now, I must state that plagiarism isn't the only controversy this game has faced. This includes, but not limited to, claiming that the game also plagiarized Arc, asset theft for Pokemon, animal abuse, and possibly using AI. Now, there has been many people debunking all except for the animal abuse one, because that's the only one that is actually real in a sense, but it's not something that, from what I could tell, is something that's heavily promoted in the game itself. But this isn't the 50th video analyzing the controversies. This is about how many fat stacks the game made. Now, from the latest posting I could find in regards to revenue for this game is in a GameByte article stating that as of March 10th of this year, the game has been estimated to earn over 500 million USD. Now, this trumps both Stellar Blade and the Coffin of Lele's revenue combined by over double. I guess it goes to show how controversy stacking could just lead to the game earning more than discouraging people from buying it. Also, this is another game that led to the development team being sent death threats, which I must state that if you do this to anyone, you're genuinely a crybaby who can't handle anything in a matter that doesn't involve telling people that they should die. Anyways, moving on. Now, before I move on, I must state the obvious. J.K. Rowling is a TERF, and that's bad. I am not supporting her in this segment. I also largely don't care about Harry Potter. I personally think that it's one of the most uninteresting pieces of fantasy pop culture to ever exist, with the only Harry Potter related thing that I could latch onto is the Lego Harry Potter games. And even then, that's more because Lego games could genuinely get me to play anything about shit I don't like or care about, except for Fortnite. Nothing will get me to play that bloated ass game again. Anyways, this game committed a sin worse than sexy woman, incest, and plagiarism combined. The game being based on the works of a transphobic woman who isn't involved with the game's development at all, which at most only gives her royalty money for just creating the thing that the game is based on. Yeah, due to pure association, this has caused what I considered to be the most absurd time to be alive for that month of February. From the creation of a now inaccessible website, and I mean it's completely inaccessible, that lists every single streamer who has played the game, to literally causing VTuber Pikami to cancel the stream and later quit her Pikami persona after she was threatened and doxxed over merely announcing that she was going to play the game on stream. The situation was a disaster that ended up making things worse for both sides of the situation. All of this in retrospect, I'd say this is a great case study on what to not do in a boycott, no matter how well intended the roots are. With all that said, how much money did Hogwarts Legacy make, in spite of essentially a forest fire of controversy after controversy? Since the game's release in February of last year, the game has made at least 1 billion USD in revenue. This makes Hogwarts Legacy the absolute top dog out of all of the games mentioned here, And with a sequel for the game being scheduled for a 2025 release, it only further proves here how this whole situation that lasted for nearly a month since release only caused the sales to go up rather than causing the game to fail. Now you might think, that's it, there's nothing else to mention. I think this is enough to drive home the point in this video. No. There is one last example that isn't like everything I've talked about previously here. It's not even a game, it's a show. And that show is... Yes, this show of all things. You may be thinking, why the Velma show of all things? Well, there's an important point that I feel I need to address, and it's that this is a case where I wholeheartedly believe that the show was purposely made out of spite to bring it attention, and it worked. Now, I haven't actually seen the show because I want to save it for a separate video dedicating it to going to analyzing every single detail I could in order to prove this theory. So think of this section as a teaser for what's to come. If you actually analyze the dialogue being said by the characters, then you'll notice how very unnatural and clearly buzzwordy it all comes off as. For example, this infamous line at the end of the trailer.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah, it's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
What's going on here is that this conversation is trying to make a false equivalence between potheads and man-children. It works on people who don't realize that this is a sloppy way of making said false equivalence, because this is not even an actual false equivalence people make in the first place. Now, you could chalk this up to trailer editing making the show look worse than it is, but this is still dialogue that's in the show, and that doesn't change anything. Unless the clip itself is Frankensteined the way it is, trailer editing shouldn't be used as an excuse for bad writing. Now, the show did receive massive viewership for the HBO Max platform for Season 1, and 2 not having a concrete answer as of now in regards to if it's successful enough to get it a third season, in spite of the 2 seasons the show was initially contracted for. The fact that it even got successful, whether or not the writing was intentionally rage-inducing, it is still what I feel is genuinely sad, since it sets up a standard of how people don't have to write anything genuinely good to get attention. Just get as many people as mad as you can and profit off of it. And that's really the general thesis of this video. The point of this video is to highlight how on the internet, especially Twitter, people getting mad at really any piece of media all because it contains material and subject matter that they don't agree with, and they make it their duty to aggressively convince people to disengage with said piece of media for whatever reason. What ends up happening, however, is that people instead buy or officially watch said thing, masses of people tell them not to. Reverse psychology is something people often underestimate the power of, and how that can be turned into an unintentional marketing campaign that brings in millions in revenue. Now you may ask, what's the solution? Simple. Don't talk about it. This might come off as me trying to get you to do a Sisyphean level task, but it really is not in practice. The idea is that if you don't direct attention to the thing you don't like, then at the very least, that thing won't have as much success as it would have if it was contributed by hate-filled bandwagons. Instead, promote things you like. There's already enough hostility in the online sphere, why not share some positivity? I'm not saying you shouldn't say anything negative about anything ever, but what I am saying is to not be a grumpy Gus 24/7 who also sends death threats and doxes people over something that's trivial at the end of the day. With that said, thank you for watching this video. Like I said earlier, there will be a separate video going into detail on the Velma show and whether or not my theory holds ground, or I'm just insane in denying that the show is just that bad. But yeah, with all that said, hit that like, hit that subscribe if you want to. I'm not your mom. And check me out on my socials. I will see you guys next time.
LODSOVEMONE. What's they spell? Loads of money.